Pardes, the 4 levels of Torah interpretation for beginners, revised 5/2103 by Rabbi Edward Levi Needle. The Hebrew word Pardes is spelled without vowels, P-R-D-S, and refers to a garden of delight or a park enclosed by a wall. It can be found in the Brit Hadashah in Luke 23:43, 2 Corinthians 12:4, and Revelations 2:7. It is an acronym for the following words. 1. Pashat, simple. 2. Remetz, hint. 3. Drash, search. And 4. Sad, hidden. The study of the Torah is like an onion. The more layers you peel off, the deeper you go to the heart or soul of it. Pashat. It is the literal meaning of the text being studied. It is the plain, simple meaning of the text in the grammatical and historical context. An important rule to follow is, no method of interpretation can negate the Pashat level meaning of the text. This is the key to understanding Scripture. This results in an exegesis of the text, not an exegesis from prejudices. One is objective and the other is subjective reading. Remetz. This is the implied meaning of the text. The text is hinting at a deeper truth than what is revealed. Drash. This is the allegorical, typological, homiletical meaning of the text being studied. Great creativity can be used in this level. You can search the scriptures, other historical works, in order to develop the application to the text. This process does involve exegesis of the text. Sod. This is the deepest level, secrets and mysteries, which are mysterious underlying secrets revealed in the text, which can and often do require many hours, weeks, months, and in some cases, even years to receive through the diligent study and meditation in Yahweh's Word.
The Jews insist upon a literal interpretation of the Scripture based on 13 laws, but we know that the spiritual interpretation is far superior.
Jerome, what did Rabbi Yeshua really say in the Hebrew or Aramaic language when he spoke to the people? What did the words mean to those who heard him? This is a question of hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the science of applying basic laws of interpretation to the scriptures in order to understand what is being said in the document or scroll. This reveals the biggest difference between Hebraic thought and Greek Roman Christian thought. In Hebraic thought, there is an agreed upon system of interpretation of the scriptures that has kept the Jewish people united upon the question of interpretation, even if they are divided upon the question of authority and observance. The differences are in the question of observance of the Torah commands, halakha, not what Moshe meant when he said something. The Hebraic principles of interpretation have helped to maintain the unity of the Israelite people and the Torah for around 4,000 years. Since Clement of Alexandria, Christianity has rejected these Hebraic principles of interpretation and substituted the principles of the Greek mythology and their physiological logic. This was done with no premise of any system or laws of scriptural interpretation. Therefore, they rejected the literal interpretation of the scriptures as Jewish and substituted the spiritual interpretation of the scriptures as valid. Dogma after dogma was written until the theological system had the appearance of pagan Greek mythology rather than the historical faith of Yeshua and his Talmudim. These dogmas and creeds were enforced, and anyone who did not agree with them was branded a heretic, an apostate, a blasphemer, or an infidel. In order to achieve this departing from the original faith of the Talmudim, it required the church to depart from the Hebraic meaning of certain words. The result was redefinition of certain words, so much so that the vocabulary of the Hebrew and the Christian are worlds apart. Words such as the word, grace, Messiah, redemption, and salvation have entirely different meanings to the Hebrew mind than they have for the average Christian. Theology is an accommodation of particular truths based upon the given meaning of terms into a system of dogmatic expression. It is easy to educate a community in that system and ignore the true inspired meanings of certain terms. This is why Christianity has become divided and fragmented over doctrine. Satan, Hillel, has used theology as a tool that has been used to create division and a very poor substitute for study and understanding of the Torah. There is no such thing as theology to the Hebraic mind. They have a system for scriptural interpretation, so the development of theology was not only unnecessary, but also impossible. With the correct method of interpretation, any given passage or word could never be restricted to one interpretation. Unfortunately, the average Christian has been taught that there is one and only one meaning to each prophetic word or passage. He also thinks that the Ruach HaKodesh is an exclusive Christian revelation and totally unknown to the Hebrews. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of Scripture came to be of one's own interpretation, for prophecy never came by the desire of man, but men of Elohim spoke, being moved by the set-apart Spirit. 2 Peter 1:20 through 21. Knowing this first, that every nevuah, prophecy of the Kitvei HaKodesh, is not of one's own interpretation. For no nevuah was at any time brought by the Ratzon HaAdam, will of man, but men being carried along by the Ruach HaKodesh spoke from Yahweh. The word hermeneutic comes from the meaning speaking by the Spirit. In Greek mythology, Hermes was the speaker for the gods. He was the one who brought their messages to men, and he also interpreted it to them. Pneuma is Greek for spirit. Hence, hermeneutics is speaking or interpreting the message of Yahweh by the Spirit. It is not a systemless interpretation. The Ruach HaKodesh, or breath of Yahweh, is a Hebraic concept and is never at variance with the written Torah. Each interpretation cannot violate the laws of the system. These laws work in harmony, not in opposition to each other. The result is a vast depth of possibility and expansion of meaning of words and scripture with the operation and use of these laws in the Hebraic system of interpretation. The reason these laws were rejected by the church fathers was the fact that they were viewed as too Jewish. Thus, the rejection of the system of interpretation required a substitution to accommodate the spiritual interpretation of Scripture in place of the literal. Church councils were called to redefine words to fit the new spiritual interpretation of Scripture. The words and phrases from Hebrew took on a new meaning, totally unrelated to their Hebrew origins and meanings. The result was a dogmatic theology that was based upon Greek logic, which separated the church from the olive tree of Israel even further. These laws of Hebraic interpretation are divided into 4 levels called PRDS, or Pardes, Paradise, Orchard, or Gan Eden. Another reason the replacement theologians rejected this Hebraic system was that it created students that learned to think for themselves. Seminaries that would develop their students to think in the parameter of Hebraic thought would create a clergy that was more interested in asking questions than giving their dogmatic cookie-cutter answers. This would then diminish the denominational schools of thought that brainwash clergy and do not allow them to think at all. What and how the clergy think is reflected in the people, laity, like priest, like people. A thinking clergy would produce a thinking laity. The 4 levels. The name of the 4 levels of Hebraic interpretation is called Pardes. Pashat, simple. Remez, hint level. Drash, exegetical level. And Sod, secret level or hidden level. These levels are placed in order of lowest to highest. They do not conflict with one another nor negate one another, but are complementary to one another. The Sod level does not negate the Pashat level of the passage, but gives a deeper meaning and perspective into the interpretation. Bereshith, Genesis, is the book of beginnings. The other 4 books of the Torah, Shemoth, Vayikra, and Devarim, contain the Torah given to all 12 tribes of Israel at Mount Sinai. They contain the law of Moshe. There are 4 books, 4 levels of interpretation. There are 4 books containing the life of our Rabbi Yeshua. There are 4 writers of the good news. Each one of the writers and his account of the life of Mashiach Yeshua correspond to the 4 levels of interpretation. John Mark, the simple or Pashat. Luke is the Remez or allegorical account. Matityahu is the Drash or Midrash, parabolic account of the life of Yeshua. And Yochanan is the Sod or hidden account. Just as each level of interpretation requires its own emphasis, so does each one of the writers of the life of Yeshua. Each account has its own order of presentation, and each writer has chosen to express it in the vocabulary of his stature of life and the proper words in describing any given event. As the 4 levels of interpretation were to develop contrast and to multiply meanings of words of the Torah, so the 4 accounts were given to show multiplicity of meaning to the readers of each level. Each gives us a different viewpoint or perspective on the life of Yeshua. The Pashat level is for the simple man and is the plain literal meaning of the text. We ask, what does the Torah ask of me? What must I do to fulfill the Torah in my life? This simple level gave us a guide to the actions and conduct of the common person. The good news, according to Mark, is on the Pashat level. He wrote a short, precise account of the life of Yeshua. He wrote with simple, precise facts. He actually wrote in somewhat of a Mishnaic style. He presents the Mashiach as the suffering servant for the common people. The Remez level is the allegorical or hint level. This level has a higher aim and is nobler in its content. It was for the doctors, teachers, lawyers, and those of the noble class. This level does not replace the Pashat level, but adds grace and seasoning to it. Luke is a physician and an aristocrat. His account in his Good News is more flowery and noble. He uses more technical terms and words in his writing. His writing is very similar to the Gemara. He presents Yeshua as the Son of Man. Every word is remez or hint to another higher parallel. Luke is more intricate in his treatment of the Torah and Halakha. Luke could not have been a Gentile, as he uses more Hebraisms and rabbinical terminology than any other author in the Brit Hadashah. The next level is drash, or midrash. It means to thresh. It is parabolic in nature. It bases its symbolism on the entire narrative rather than on word-phrase level. This is where suggestive possibility comes into play in interpretation. Matityahu is from the tribe of Levi. He sees Yeshua through the eyes of the kingdom Malchut Ha-Shemayim. We can see this in his genealogy of the Moshiach, tracing him through the line of David. He presents Yeshua as the king. His account is the most lengthy of all the good news. Matityahu stresses the parables of the Rabbi Yeshua as no other writer does in the Brit Hadashah. A parable can be given as much to conceal a truth as reveal one. A parable is a suggestive supposition in the form of a narrative and is preceded by a statement that it is a parable, or be the terms, such and such is like unto. Most of the parables of our Rabbi Yeshua have never been interpreted to their full midrashic tenor. They will never be until we begin applying the rules of Hebraic interpretation to them and place them in the Hebrew text from which they originally came. The fourth and last level is Sod, meaning the secret or concealed meaning. This is the highest and most complicated level of interpretation. It is more otherworldly or actually prophetic in nature. The writer sees the material world through the miraculous rather than seeing the miraculous world through the material. This focuses upon the word and letters of the Torah. Yochanan is writing the hidden life of Yeshua. His narrative focuses around 7 miracles in the life of Yeshua. The key to this book is chapter 20, 30 through 31. He presents Yeshua as the son of Elohim, the Mashiach. He speaks of light shining out of darkness in the vernacular of sons of Zadok at Qumran. Yohanan is a man of dreams and visions. He is the Daniel of the Brit Hadashah. He even opens his account with a quote from the oral tradition, and the Torah became flesh, dwelling among us, and we beheld his glory. This written in the vocabulary of the mystic. Yohanan does not even make an effort to make his account synonymous with the other narratives. The problem. With this understanding of the good news accounts and the Hebraic manner they were written, we have the solution to the synoptic problem in the Brit Hadashah. The synoptic problem claims that each narrative is a copy of a former source for the good news. For example, Luke copied from Mark, and Matityahu copied from Luke, etc. The problem with the synoptic approach is the negative attitude toward the Hebraic origin of the language of the good news, or the fact that they were all recorded in Hebrew originally, and the abandonment of the 4 levels of interpretation. This does not mean that we do not use textual analysis and criticism. On the contrary, comparative analysis is necessary and profitable to the student of Scripture. It can only be when synoptic mechanics of study are subjected to the 4 Hebraic methods and laws of interpretation will the synoptic problem be solved. The very spirit of the synoptic problem is the basis of replacement theory in the church. It cannot coexist with the Hebraic laws of interpretation. Since the church has divorced itself from Israel and from understanding Yeshua in the framework of the Hebraic way of interpretation of Scripture, Pardes, they had to substitute the Greek physiological logic way of the dogmatic theory to the 4 good news accounts by Israelite writers. The result has been the invention of Jesus Christ and the anti-Torah, anti-Jewish, pig-eating, long-haired, white-robed, blue-eyed, white, Sunday-going, Xmas-born, Bible-toting Christian who died on the cross and rose on Easter Sunday, Ishtar, to set us free from the law of Yahweh. This is a pagan, man-made image that has been substituted for the true Yeshua and Brit Hadashah, a renewed covenant, apart from the olive tree of Yisrael and Hebraic thought and laws of scriptural interpretation and study. We cannot substitute the Hebraic methods of studying scripture for the Greek pagan methods of logic. One new translation after another, one new commentary after another, each saying the same thing, just new cliches and spins on the same old lie. Each one is more anti-Semitic and anti-Torah than the preceding one. Those who claim to have a love for Yisrael have an anti-Semitic undercurrent and foundation in the Greek theological system of hermeneutics. As history has proven, Ephraim is still substituting what it thinks is better, so Yisrael will not follow the Torah and worship Yahweh. They are satisfied with a cheap substitute rather than the real thing. The sin of Jeroboam continues in Yisrael. Thus Yisrael revolted against the house of David to this day. 1 Kings 12:19. We praise Yahweh that more believers are saying, what did Yeshua really say, and what did his words really mean? Returning to the Hebraic laws of interpretation of the scriptures, Pardes will swell his every word with the pregnancy of his message for the Messianic Yisrael. It will result in a myriad of new meanings and a greater understanding of his mission to find the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael. It will enrich the lives of every Israelite as he seeks to serve the Master and Rabbi Yeshua HaMashiach by observing the Torah of Yahweh. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, in those days 10 men from all languages of the Goyim, the lost sheep of Yisrael, take hold, yea, they shall take hold of the tzitzit, representing the Torah and the name of a man, a Yehudite, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. Zechariah 8:23. There awaits each one that is willing to think for himself and abandon the Greek logic and the theology of the church fathers and study the Torah and Brit Hadashah in the Hebraic method of interpretation, a crown of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. You will experience the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of truth, the set-apart spirit leading you into all truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. May Yahweh truly bless your study of his Torah and understanding.
We're returning to you from all the corners of the earth to keep your commandments, cause we knew it was your voice we heard. We dropped everything, all those lies we inherited from our forefathers. We walk in your ways, we come to the fountain of living water.